With you, and I'm addicted to barbershop singing. So. This story is going to be nowhere near as much fun to listen to as what we've heard in the past, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this all happened for me. And I can start in 1945 when my parents moved from Butte, Montana to Minneapolis. And a fellow by the name of Reuben Youngdahl was building a church in South Minneapolis. He stopped by, that's how he was getting people. He knocked on the door and turned those Methodists into Lutherans. And even back in the day, they had a music program that was relatively robust. And so I found myself, I have no idea how I got there, but I was part of the little boys choir, and a woman by the name of Edith Norberg was in charge of all the music, and that's where it started. It went from the little boys choir. I don't know if they had a junior high choir because my memory's not so good, but they had a high school choir that was a terrific place to be socially as well as musically. I went to Washburn High School, where a fellow by the name of Jim Bowline had a wonderful, wonderful choral program. Sang in an octet, a mixed octet. Had a lot of fun with that. Did a musical of some kind. I can't remember the name of it, but it was we had a good time. And so it started early, and I guess I've always enjoyed the music. I got out of Washburn High School and somehow talked my father into letting me go down to Gustavus for college. And that's a different story, but that wasn't going to be the plan. So I went down to Gustavus, and the fellow that was going to be, turned out to be my roommate for the next 4 years, and his girlfriend and a bunch of other people said, "You've got to try out for the concert choir." And so I did. My roommate made it. His girlfriend made it. Another friend of ours made it. Ken did not make it. Ken was feeling sorry for himself, and somebody came along and said, "You know what? Don't despair. Phil Knauts has a group of men that sing downtown once a week. There's some of us that go down there and sing." And so it was that I wandered into, with some other Gustavus people, the St. Peter Singing Saints Barbershop Chorus. And I got introduced to this music, the wonderful close harmonies and the a cappella and all of that. And I have to tell you, the main reason I was down there was to brown nose the guy so I could get into his choir the next year, which did happen. And but also, unfortunately, it was one of those wonderful choruses that was extremely social, and we'd sing for 2 hours and drink for 2 hours. And when you're 18 years old and the drinking age is 21, and you're able to drink with the druggist, Bob Faust was the druggist. Bill Lydecker, some of you may remember that name. He was a psychologist out of St. Peter State Hospital. Donnie Miller was a football coach down in Mankato. It was a wonderful group of guys, and excuse me for getting out of the frame here, but I brought a prop along. And lo and behold, here's the St. Peter Singing Saints at some year, I have no idea, but about a third of the people that are in that photograph were students at Gustavus. All of them sang in the concert choir. And it really was a very good time. We took second, I remember, I think it was in Racine, Wisconsin, to the Commodores one year, and it was fun, and I enjoyed that. As a matter of fact, it was my only
young guys
quartet experience that I've had in singing barbershop. Oddly enough, with all the socializing that went on, someone in our group, one of the four of us, found a book titled Songs of Prohibition. And it's a little red hymnal, literally a hymnal. And it was a lot of temperance kind of songs. And so we formed up a quartet, called ourselves the Prohibition Four. And we sang songs out of there. We had our tenor was, I don't know if anybody knows the name of Bill Holm. Bill was, he's kind of a poor man's Garrison Keillor. He's written some books. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being. Passed away some years ago. But he was a gifted musician, and he did some arranging of these songs for us. Where is my wandering boy tonight down at the licensed saloon? He did Let Her Sleep Under the Bar. And my personal favorite goes like this. Oh, our home was so happy and carefree and bright before Father left us alone every night. But the tempter assailed him, he yielded and fell. And sad is our home and the stories we tell, how brightness has turned into darkness and gloom, how love and affection to cursing gave room, for father's a drunkard, his manhood all gone, forsake love and home for the licensed saloon. Now there's more, but I won't give it to you. But I think the only reason I did that is that I find it very interesting. Every once in a while you read an article about some person that's aging and in a nursing home or convalescing or something and has lost a little bit of their mind, but music can bring them back into that. I haven't sung that song in 50-some years, you know, and I still know it. At any rate, so we did that. The Buffalo Bills were on one of our shows. My roommate's girlfriend got to sing the part, Lida Rose, and got out of college, and those were the years of if you weren't married or in graduate school, you got drafted, and I did. And I spent 2 years keeping the people safe in Alabama. I was very lucky I did not have to go to Vietnam, but there wasn't any singing going on in Alabama. I met the woman who was going to be my first wife in college in the concert choir. We never dated when I was there, but the music part of that relationship was very good. And the lady that I did date off and on for 4 years dumped me, unfortunately, after we graduated, and we were very good friends. Mary and I were very good friends in college, and we started dating, and she agreed to marry me. I don't think she's been god-awful disappointed, but it's been 51 plus years now. And she married me just before we got out of the service. Came back to Minnesota. She was a teacher. I was working for General Electric, traveled a little bit, and we spent 2 years in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I traveled North and South Dakota. Didn't have any time for singing because of the traveling, and I didn't really know enough about what this hobby had, the extent, the breadth of it. And so that really wasn't on the radar. Came back to Minneapolis, and my wife, who was from a town of 5,000 people in South Dakota, said, I'm not going to join a church that's got 15,000 members. That's 3 times the size of my town. This is silly. So we visited a few churches, and I can tell you that after not finding a place that we thought was going to be home for us, I said, why don't you just go sing with the choir at Mount Olivet for a while? And Bob Berglund, who was the music director at Bethel College at the time, was in charge of the music program at Mount Olivet. Wonderful guy, wonderful arranger of hymn tunes. And so she started singing there. And he eventually asked why I wasn't singing. And I said, well, I'm not always home on the nights that you were here. Oh, come on. So I joined her on whatever night the rehearsal was. And wonderful, wonderful group of people, a good choir. And there was a fellow by the name of Jim Ellingson in that Mount Olivet choir. And Jim said, you know, Ken, you gotta come to this rehearsal that I've got with the Commodores. And over the years, Jim got me to not only a few rehearsals, but he got me to a few shows. And I remember Gentleman's Agreement was here. And I was so taken by Shenandoah that I wrote and they sold me a couple of albums for $5 a piece. Great Injustice, I think I still have the letter he wrote back. I ran into him at a convention one time and I reminded of him. And so it was that I became more familiar with the music, but I didn't have the time. I was never here at the right time, etc. And so there was no barbershop singing for me, although as I traveled periodically, I'd get into that southeastern corner of Wisconsin and I'd go to the store and get some music and get not 8-track tapes, Bob. I know you still have some of yours in your house, but the cassette tapes. And so I was able to listen to the music. And finally, in 2004, I'm the kind of a guy that really is not good about gifts and birthdays and anniversaries, all this. I'm a late guy. I'm late to the party, and I'm always scrambling for something. And I remembered that the Commodores always had a Valentine's show, and it was Valentine's coming up. And so went and got some tickets, and we went over to wherever it was that year. It might have been at Bethel, but this is 2004 in February. And as we get to the intermission, she's going through the program, and she's saying, they've got a guest night coming up. You're having too much fun. You've wanted to do this for 35, 40 years. You need to do it. Your life is different today. You're not always on the road. And then Riptide came out. Now, I don't know what the difference was between Gentleman's Agreement and Riptide in my mind, but I can tell you this, that I could not remember listening to chords at that volume, in tune, and we had never seen anybody post a note. And Timmy Reynolds was, a 30, 40-second post in these songs, and it was just craziness. We're on our way home, and she said, Ken, how come we've never been where all those quartets are? And I said, it's a different city in North America every year. I said, I don't even recall if they've been in Minneapolis or if they're coming back to Minneapolis. But 14 years ago, there was enough information available on the internet. I got on and I said, well, they're down in Louisville this year, dear. And I said, I honestly don't know if the Commodores are going. I'd heard about the Great Northern Union because Jim was kind enough to inform me about this radical group of people that pulled away from a variety of choruses to form this special audition chorus. And I said, I think these are the guys that are probably going to be able to going down there. So I went over, auditioned, and 3 of us joined at the same time. And we could have a whole nother discussion about audition choruses and what's happening throughout the society today. But I will tell you that we went down to Louisville, and my wife and I, because she's got a good enough musical ear, and she's smart enough about things musical, we have yet to miss an international, even when GNU wasn't singing. And it's wonderful to have that kind of support because she really, really enjoys going. I was telling Kevin that back in 2013, we were going to Scandinavia instead of Toronto until I discovered the cheapest flight from Minneapolis to Stockholm was on Air Canada. And I said, well, this makes a lot of sense. We can stop in Toronto, which is what we did. So I would tell you that over the 14 years that I've been doing this with the GNU and meeting literally hundreds of people, watching what develops throughout the society, there's a couple of things that strike me as I think important. And I've told this to people in the not too recent past, but outside of the 16 people that make up my immediate family, children and grandchildren, and my late sister's children and their children, there are 3 things in my life that take up a fair amount of time. One of them is this church that we still belong to. We're very active in it. The other is I've spent 30-some years going to meetings with other people that have addressed chemical issues in their life. And I sing Barbershop. There are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of interactions over my lifetime. And in none of these three places do we do politics. I don't have it in my church. I don't have it in that group of men and women that get together on occasion. And you can't sing religious songs or political songs in contests. But there are such wonderful arrangements that are available to be done outside of context. And our former director, Peter Benson, is a man of deep faith. And so we always had a robust, and there were some people that thought it was too big a part of our repertoire was gospel kind of songs. But the music that's available there, and when and it isn't happening quite so much more right now because of the songs we're singing, but rare is the contest or the performance that at some time, at least once during the evening or several times during the evening, and I know you all know the feeling, every hair on your body just goes gazing. And you know that you've locked in something that's special. It's a physiological reaction to a sound. And when you can see that happening with people in the audience, the kind of joy, we kind of sing for ourselves, make no mistake about it. But when you can see that connection you have in music, to me it's important. It's a lifelong sport. I think it was Deke Sharon that said barbershopping is a black belt of a cappella singing. And I tend to agree with that. But I look around this room and the history that all of you people have got in common, and I'm part of that, but nowhere near as long as some of the others. It is just, it's one of the things that makes life worth living. It's one of the things that I know is keeping me alive. Bob Griffith over here, I'll never forget walking in and meeting him for the first time. You know, Bob, you're not 27 anymore. And neither am I, but as you come here, we come here once a week, we get to sing, and the fellowship between all of the people that you meet. I've had very few, if any, interactions in this society that have been negative to a level that you really want to be upset about. But it's great. I love this. I hope I can keep doing it for a long time because it is worth it. Thanks for listening. That's all I got.